Here we go.
All right. So Chuck, thank you so much for making time in what I know is an incredibly hectic schedule. Great to see you here.
It's my pleasure to be here, Lorraine. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, good stuff. So we're going to jump in. Before I get into the nitty gritty questions, it'd just be really helpful if you could introduce yourself in whatever way you like, because I know you wear a lot of hats. So whatever you'd like to say to the world about yourself.
My name is Chuck Barnett. I am a 50-year-old Mohawk of Ganhawaga, which is a native reserve just about 15 minutes southwest of Montreal. I am a full-time farmer. I am also I'm the chairman and CEO of a international data center company, which is world ranked. I'm also a 17-year member of the board of directors of a regional economic development authority. And I'm a father, homemaker, mechanic, farmer, name it. I wear several hats.
Terrific. Thank you. And I would also just add, you're a great influencer. When I see what you say and do in places like Facebook, people fall in line behind what you say.
I'm a big nobody of consequence.
All righty. Well, we'll see what this big nobody has to say.
Sure.
A couple other quick stage setting questions, just in the spirit of transparency. I always like to ask people I'm interviewing if you have any commercial relationship with TD Bank, which is the company we're going to talk about.
No, I don't. As a matter of fact, I prefer to do my banking through a local credit union in order to keep the sort of the proceeds and the economic stimulation within my own local economy.
Great. Okay, thanks. And then also in the spirit of transparency, I like to disclose how I come to know the person that I'm interviewing.
Sure.
So anybody who's paying attention to these interviews, which would be maybe 3 or 4 people, will notice a pattern, which is that I like to interview my friends.
Yep.
So I think of you, Chuck, as a friend, as a mentor, and somebody who's guided me. We have yet to have a chance to work formally together, but you let me show up and darken your door from time to time, for which I'm
you're a treat.
Oh, well, thank you. Mutual Admiration Society.
There we go.
So on that note, I'm going to be looking off screen a little bit, just consulting some questions, and I'm going to begin the process of peppering you with a few questions to go through this assessment. The first one is really very much about your views about the future, and I'll just set this one up a little bit. You've seen it and called it for what it is many times. There's a lot of jargon out there about sustainability, about regenerative future, regenerative economy, etc. So setting the jargon aside, how would you describe the future you want in your own words?
Okay, the future I want. You got to be careful because you don't always get what you expect. Sometimes you get what you deserve.
True.
Okay. So the future I would like to see, and if we're talking, there's many different forms of the future. Is it a year from now? Is it 5 years from now? Is it 20 years from now when I'm a withered old man gumming my food? At some point, I would like to see a development in the societal sense where people are more enabled, where people are encouraged and educated to, we're in a society that promotes self-sufficiency rather than dependence on a sort of consumer supplier situation. I'm also a farmer, so that's a little telling. I like to see people become more independent. I would like to see people more, I would like to see a greater education in financial resources and tools and one's own personal financial planning. We live in a day and age where people talk about apocalypse and we talk about the end of whatever, and there's a lot of dark discussion and stuff, and everybody's sort of waiting for a bomb to go off in some sorts, whether it's an economic bomb, a societal bomb, because we're a society that's ripping ourselves apart, or what that's going to look like. But we have to remember that calamity comes in the most personal form first. It's either the loss of income, it's the loss of a spouse, it's the loss of the family home. So disaster strikes one person at a time. So we have to measure our lives and our expectations not based on large disasters, but individual disasters. And I think if people are better equipped, better educated, and are prepared and enabled to use the tools and resources available to them, they will be masters of their own destiny. And essentially, that's what I'd like to see. I would like to see a future where people are enabled and empowered to find their own course.
I love it. Actually, that prompts me to tuck an extra little question in here. When you introduced yourself, you said a bit about what you've been up to. Can you just insert a little more about the kind of work you're doing with the crew, if you wouldn't mind, because I think it's really indicative of what you just described.
Not a problem at all, Lorraine. I'd be happy to. We are a fairly small farm in the commercial sense here, but my partner Valerie and I, we also out of our own pocket, we run an educational program to take in younger people who maybe are not, younger Native kids, we'll say, between the ages, say, 18 and 25 on average, historically anyways, who are maybe not really on a course for their own personal success as of yet, and require a bit of mentoring, a bit of steerage, and a bit of direction. And the fiber of families societal wide has sort of been broken down and frayed. And so we're sort of assuming our traditional roles in Mohawk culture as uncles and aunts. And in Mohawk culture, it's not typically your father that raises you and guides you. It's your mother's family. And that would be your uncles, your mother's brothers are the ones who guide you, who put you on the track. When they see you start veering off, they grab you by the neck and shoulder, pull you back in and keep you on a path, which is going to help you provide for yourself a better lifestyle, a more productive lifestyle. And that's sort of where we come in an intervention way. We have a great crew of young people. We allow them to stay with us for 3 years. They can stay with us for 3 seasons where they'll pick up vocational skills. They're going to learn livestock maintenance, the typical farm skills, which are really about 110 skills wrapped into one title. Everything from accounting and bookkeeping and sales to human resource management, mechanics, plumbing, electrical, animal husbandry, crop tilling, all the things you need to know in order to wear the hat that says farmer on it. Whether they become farmers or agriculturists or horticulturists at the end of the day, we're not really concerned with. If they want to go on to become a certified public accountant, we will get behind them. We will enroll them in school. I will actually go with you and help you write your resume and CV and sit outside in the hallway while you do your interview. So we try to restore something which has been sorely broken in our communities and in our families, and try to set those things straight, whereas acts of legislation for the last 130 years have sort of broken our families, broken our communities, and broken the will and spirit of many families. So we're sort of a two-person crew on a mission to sort of fix what has been broken, because there isn't going to be any cavalry coming. So I guess we're going to have to do it ourselves.
Yeah, love it. And I was leading the witness a little there because I know firsthand seeing that you are living that future that you described. So thank you for going on that little segue with me.
No worries.
Yeah, and I'll take us now into the more TD specific questions. And as I mentioned before we started recording, I'm going to ask you some questions about TD Bank. If your answers are broader, so be it. You can frame it in whatever way feels right to you. I'd like to start with the positive impacts. So what I'm looking for here is anything when you think about TD Bank's activities, what do you see as positive impacts that might be contributing to that future that you just described that you want? Any evidence, examples of how that bank is contributing to that future?
Okay, I'll try not to indulge in any sort of hyperbole here, and these are all sort of measured responses. I think what to most people who have any passing interest in the banking industry or commercial banking, there's an awareness that TD offers slightly more generous interest rates on deposits. They sort of claw that back though in terms of their fee structure. So there's not exactly a free lunch involved in there, but they do have some form of reputation for being slightly more generous in the interest rates. I know that they promote a handful of environmental awareness programs. I think probably chief amongst those is the TD Green Streets program, which in the spirit of disclosure, we were actually a supplier on a job that was sponsored by TD to a local environmental protection organization. So we had no direct contact with TD in that undertaking. However, they do promote sort of, you know, public affairs moments like that.
Great, thank you. And so I'm gonna.
Did I miss anything along the way?
Gosh,
I don't want to.
No, it's only what you perceive as positive activities, and there's time to kind of circle back if you want to bring more up. But let's flip the coin and talk about your sense of any negative impacts or activities. And the way we're looking at this is things you understand the bank is doing that would be undermining the future that you described. Any evidence or examples that come to mind?
Oh, absolutely. I would love to hear what the CEO or anybody in senior management's vision of. I'd like to hear what their vision of the future might be, and whether their present actions conflict with that sense of the future. And sometimes we would say when what we want is in conflict with what we need to do. I guess in sort of Mohawk philosophical perspective, we call that a being of two minds. You're not thinking with one mind, you're thinking between what you want and what you know to be correct. And that creates a conflict in the person. So if TD, and I'm not trying to insert words or thoughts into anybody's head, if TD wants a healthy future by whatever metrics they define that to be, if they want a more prosperous future in terms of the society and or their clients, those things will be best made manifest in their actions today. And they would be well served in those interests to ask, are the things that we're doing today in conflict with that future vision? Are we feeding into a negative future? Are we manifesting that thing that we fear the most? Okay. It's sometimes said that if you're on an icy road here in Canada and your car or your truck starts to go into a spin on that icy road, to keep your eyes on the road where you're going, not to the side of the road where you don't want to go. If you look to the side of the road, you will innately be pulled to the side of the road and meet certain doom or at least grievous injury. So if you keep your eye focused on where you intend to be, not where you want to be, where you intend to be, that is the course you'll be on. So if TD as a collective wishes to have a brighter, positive, healthier, more productive, more humane future, they would be best served on keeping their eyes and actions on that goal. Now, having said that, I do not use the word hypocrisy lightly. And if I should, understand that I use it with great intention. It is a difficult proposition for one to aspire to a healthy, more ecologically, environmentally sound future when one is in the present moment investing in tar sands projects or deforestation projects, particularly when they run across the territory of Canada's most poorest population, who would be the Indigenous occupants of this land. So in this case, we have a scenario between what we claim to want and what our actions inform us is actually happening. And there they might find themselves of two minds. And I would encourage them to correct themselves and reconcile those two paths. Okay. You can only go down one path. Okay. And so they, as a collective, must examine what it is that they want and if their actions are in line with their beliefs.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really helpful.
I don't know if that, does that little impromptu soliloquy capture?
It sure does. It gently underscores some of the potential undermining of that future you described. And I want to circle back to something you said, actually in very simple response to my question. If you have a commercial relationship with them, you said, no, you choose to bank with a local credit union.
Yep.
And I definitely don't want to put words in your mouth, but I did want to check in terms of other potential negative or undermining impacts. Are there comments you would have about more on just the retail individual banking? So what you just described there was sort of their investment or wholesale banking,
Okay.
absolutely a factor. Anything on the everyday that you want to chime in on?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Okay. So again, I'll sort of parse through my words very carefully here, understanding that this is on the record. Well, if I was in a leadership position of a retail banking institution, as I aspired to being a moral person, to being a good community member, to being an asset, me, Chuck Barnett, to be an asset to my community, or rather than a liability or any sort of cancer or parasite on that community. I would ask myself, aside from, the occasional sponsoring of a soccer team or a lacrosse team, or, contributing to a Make-A-Wish Foundation type thing, which are nice in terms of optics. And I would ask myself, being a community member more than simply having a brick and mortar footprint within a geographical boundary, or am I morally and sincerely invested in the growth, health, and development of this place that I choose to make my home for this brick and mortar foundation? Am I a long-term player? Will I be here in 40, 60, 80, or 100 years and let my actions dictate that? Or am I a pirate? Am I an opportunist who is taking advantage of the local population in terms of, at times, obscene service fees? Okay, whether it's technically legal, into the letter of the word, morally foggy interest rates. And I realize all these things are set and governed by a national standard. So I have a difficult time being able to target a specific entity in that regard. Ask yourself, how am I an asset to this community, other than the fact that I occupy real estate here and maybe employ a dozen or 24 local people, pay rents, utilities, and whatnot, or contribute to the essentially the tax base of that municipality? Ask yourself, how am I making this place better beyond simply by virtue of my mere existence? Am I doing anything to foster or offer a benefit to local small businesses, okay, or to local young first-time home buyers or builders? What am I doing to foster the healthy growth and development of my community? Am I working closely with the Chamber of Commerce in these municipalities to ask myself, am I doing enough, and what can I do for you? What can I do to make this community a better place, so that we may enjoy a strong, mutually beneficial, and healthy relationship for a long time to come? We need to think in terms of not just our lifetimes, but our grandchildren's and great-grandchildren's lifetimes. And at the end of our days, we should be able to look back without regrets for our actions and all the things we've said and all the things we've done. Sorry, that was the Amazon truck.
No worries. Yeah, no small irony there.
So with having said that, if I was in leadership at TD and I was to ask myself these questions, am I a good community member? Does my relationship benefit our clients, our relationship with our clients, the fact it helps foster growth and healthy development in these communities? I think that should be at the core. And bear with me, I'm not a socialist, okay? I'm not a Marxist. I'm a capitalist. I believe in markets. I believe in strong, healthy, independent markets. But I also believe that these need to be balanced, okay, with a sense of the moral self, and in terms of whom am I benefiting aside from myself, and is it equitable in some fashion?
Oof, love it. Okay, that segues beautifully into the next question. I'm going to be sharing my screen, which I hope you can see from there. So let me know when you're going to see, I hope.
Bear with me. I'm going to light a cigarette and put it on the side so you don't see it. So just bear with me.
No worries, at ease. And tell me if you see a screen that has a slide with your name on it.
I do.
And by the way, I've included your full name as it appears on Facebook, but you can steer me straight if that's not.
That's
right.
fine. That's mostly my legal name.
All right, there we are. So I'm going to walk us through an exercise that is at best comically linear and ineffective.
Right.
And so the real object of the game here is not to place an exact numerical value on a company, but more to hear your reasoning as you guide me to do the following. And I'll just set this one up a little bit. We've got two axes that ineffectively but conceptually represent on the vertical the health and the impacts on the ecosystem. And everything above the horizontal would be a positive impact on the health of the ecosystem. Everything below the vertical would be undermining that health in some way, shape, or form. On the horizontal, we've got the social impacts. And so everything to the right of the vertical would be in some way contributing to the social health in that future you described, by the way. That's the kind of thought bubble that we hold here. And everything to the left of the vertical would be undermining the social health in that future. And so the question I would ask you, I've got a bubble over here with TD's name on it. And I would ask you, based on this highly oversimplified linear mechanistic model, where you would say TD Bank, based on your understanding, lives and why?
Again, it's difficult because I'm applying my own intrinsic set of values and imposing them on a limited perspective. So this may be very limited in value, and it's going to be composed of a great deal of personal bias. I am ambivalent. In that sense, I would provide this with the center of the axis between X and Y, divide that pie up in 4 spots. I do not believe TD to be, as a corporate entity, either benign or evil. I do not know them to be either an asset or a liability, socially or otherwise. They are simply an institution made up of people and governed by a charter. So it's very hard for me to apply any sort of personal value on their actions. I know they aspire to some great things. They set a number of goals. We don't know if those targets are being hit or missed, and we don't even know what the value of those goals are. We don't know the motives behind those goals. So it's very hard for me to apply weight to any sense. I don't say this to be difficult. And
no, it's perfect. I love the reasoning.
Okay, so I don't want to throw a wrench in your gears, but I do not feel that I can assign any kind of sort of weighted value to either of those factors. Okay,
that's actually a beautiful answer. And there's no right or wrong. I'd say wrong is like even trying to do this. So, so then hearing how people react is really helpful. So I just want to make sure, for the sake of accuracy, that the way I've placed it right now represents what you just said.
That is correct.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Perfect. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and I'm going to shift us to a couple other questions. Just a couple more. And here we're going to go into imagination land. You've actually already articulated some of this. So if it's repeat, we can cut corners, or you can just build it out even further. It's kind of cool that you already went here. So the first one is a scenario. It's totally imagination. So this just in, I actually just saw a headline where you are in charge of everything. You're in charge of the whole universe. Nothing is in the way. There are no barriers, no limitations.
Yep.
What would you change at TD Bank?
Okay, so if I was master of the universe, it would probably be fairly far down on my list in addressing TD Bank specifically, as I think there are larger problems like global hunger, biological suffering, environmental issues, all manners of corruption. I think TD would probably be in the lower 10,000th after I addressed all of those major issues. However, if I was a fixated god, if I was one if I was one who was overly anal retentive and fixated for some personal reason on the doings of TD Bank, here's what I would propose. Give me a second. There's a large vehicle passing.
Yeah.
Okay. TD Bank. Okay. If your goals and aspirations are true and sincere, and I'm not singling you out, but for the sake of this exercise, I'm singling you out. What are you doing to uplift the most impoverished people in society? What are you doing to improve the situation? Aside from generating profits for your shareholders and employing a great number of people. So I understand TD is a very large institution at a retail level. Probably have somewhere over 25 million or so clients. I don't know. I'm taking a ballpark guess, and they have inroads in the Eastern United States. So what are you doing to actually develop and uplift your peers from the constraints of poverty or lack of opportunity? What have you done lately? Okay. With that, I would encourage them. As the king of the universe at that point, and all rules regarding the market or banking regulations have sort of been evaporated into the ether. I would compel TD to say, are you offering very low interest rates and waiving a number of service fees for first-time home buyers? Okay. People who are just on the cusp of poverty, making between $30,000 and $40,000 a year. Are you developing communities aside from photo ops and ribbon cuttings? Are you engaged? Would be the question. What are you doing to help those most in need of your help? Have you asked, what can I do for you? How can I be of service? Now, I understand at the same time too, there's not a lot of profit to be generated from altruism. However, there is a possible business case that can be made for developing this sort of outreach. Okay. And I realize that TD as a brand and as a corporate entity occupies a certain space in the marketplace in terms of the clients that they provide services to, financial and otherwise. So how are you benefiting the situation? Okay. Yes, you have employees. Yes, you pay rents. Yes, you pay taxes. Everyone does. What are you doing specifically? And then I would encourage, as the master of the universe, I would encourage you to do that. And I would take ownership of removing the blockages which prohibit you or limit you. So there's some ownership on my part. It's not a simple top-down mandate. How can I, as the living God, clear the pathway to make those things possible so you can do good things?
Yeah.
If there are obstacles, are these obstacles that can be overcome through lobbying? Are these obstacles that can be overcome through developing inroads with community leadership that can be develop a stronger bond and sort of sense of place? I believe anything is possible, particularly if your pockets are quite deep, but anything is possible with the right amount of willpower. I am not a man who accepts can't do, it can't be done. There are limits. Anything is possible, but you have to apply that willpower to it first. Give me a lever long enough and I will move the world.
Love it. Oh, alas, that was just in my imagination that you were in charge of the universe. So that scenario just went poof into thin air. But another scenario has come along to try on, which is a new piece of news.
Yep.
You have a direct line to the CEO of TD Bank, Barnett Masrani. He deeply respects you, takes your calls, wants to know what you think. The only thing is, he's super busy. He's only got 30 seconds. You're on the phone with him for 30 seconds. What do you say?
Good day, sir. 30 seconds is not enough time for us to have a meaningful exchange and conversation between human beings who occupy the same relative real estate. So I would ask, can we set a time to have a more thorough and thoughtful exchange on such matters? Nothing can be accomplished in 30 seconds, and anybody who believes that anything can be changed in any meaningful way within 30 seconds is running a fool's errand. Problems are much deeper than 30 seconds allow us to really explore and walk away more enlightened and better for the exchange. This is not a realistic outcome. However, I understand that there are parameters within this proposal. Okay. I would encourage him to be brave, to be fearless, okay, to have courage and not worry himself too much about appeasing the passing needs of his shareholders. Okay. These games are played on the long spectrum, not on the short. We all want to retain our usefulness. We all want to have utility. We all want to have a meaningful life with an income proportionate to the effort that we put forward. However, I would encourage him to be brave in doing the right thing.
Love it. Thank you, Chuck. It's brilliant. Those are actually all the questions I had prepared to ask you, but I'm curious if there's anything I didn't ask you about or something else that you want to make sure you put on the table before we wrap up.
Well, you know me well, Lorraine, and you know where I come from. You've met members of my family, you know my people, you visited my community. So I am not without my biases, and I cannot divorce myself from my cultural identity as a Mohawk. I am sadly unable to split myself in two in that regard. Recognizing that the Indigenous people of Canada are among the most impoverished and for the most part living in third world conditions where clean water is a luxury, where roads are non-existent, where housing is a health hazard, to say the least. I would say, what can TD do as an institution having to work within the confines of the Canadian Indian Act to establish connectivity with these communities, not just in sort of benevolent gifts. Nobody wants a gift, okay? But in terms of opportunities. I don't know if there's any TD retail outlets on a single native reserve in Canada. Do they exist? I don't know. If you're a native person living in Canada, it is very difficult for you to secure a loan or a mortgage in order to purchase a vehicle or in order to build a new home or acquire an existing home, because we do not own title to the very lands that we occupy and have occupied for tens of thousands of years. Those titles are held in trust by the Queen of England, what we call here in Canada, the Crown. So therefore, not having title to the land, you cannot securitize a loan or a mortgage, which ends up meaning you live in a substandard house based on the wages that you can afford to be able to erect that house, keep it warm, keep it operational. What can you, TD Bank, working within the confines of the Indian Act system and local band council governments, do to create a vehicle which will allow some of the most impoverished Indigenous people in this country to be able to raise their standard of living and live in a house that is actually habitable? What can you do to assist, whether it's through the purchase or issuance of bonds, to help develop water and waste management infrastructure systems? I'm sure there is a business case to be made, and there are partnerships to be struck with the federal government in that regard. But is anybody pursuing them? Well, no, they're not. The credit union to which I belong to is a part of the movement Desjardins. Okay, and Desjardins has worked cooperatively with native reserves to be able to finance the construction of homes on reserves through a trusteeship program. Okay, and so it's a good product. in which case, because native lands cannot be alienated from reserves, so it's very difficult to seize them in the event that somebody forfeits. They can't be easily forfeited in the event that somebody defaults on a mortgage or a loan. Okay, it's not an immovable asset. So what can TD do to emulate that process, or even better yet, improve upon that process to help uplift the most impoverished people in this country? It can be done, but the will has to be there, and the will to do what's right, what's good, things that we can agree on.
Yeah.
I would like to see that model roll out. It's doable. We've been doing it in my reserve for over 25, 30 years now. And it's something that's not limited to us and can, quite frankly, be exported to any other reserve. But the will has to be there.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you. Really, really appreciate it. Anything else? Any parting words before I give you back some time on the farm there today?
Okay, nope, no worries. Fiat currency is a hell of a thing.
Yeah.
Fractional banking is a hell of a thing. Fractional loan lending is a hell of a thing.
Yeah.
Okay. These are artificial constructs, and they're constructs that most people not in the marketplace or not in the banking industry really understand. I would love to see TD invest in financial literacy at the high school level. Maybe setting up a very cost-effective system. Hell, you could even come in and sponsor the program and throw your banner all over the wall, and understanding and instructing the next generation of people what is debt monetization, what is inflation, what is a fiat currency, what is the dollar backed by, what is fractional lending, what are these systems, how can we understand them, and how can we best capitalize on them as individuals to be able to develop a future that we want. Unfortunately, financial literacy in the 21st century is quite low. And, you know, as the former king of the universe,
now retired.
I would implore of my successor in that role to be able to reach out to a certain numbers of CEOs to be able to say, what can we do to improve financial literacy? And in the process, you may find some very loyal potential future clients who will associate that gift of education, of literacy, with the entity that helped made that possible. I don't know. Maybe I'm a blue sky dreamer, but I do think the system as it's established right now, nobody's getting ahead. Well,
yeah,
some people are getting ahead. A very tiny fraction of society is getting ahead. However, it's not a zero-sum game. We can all get ahead. Just because someone wins doesn't necessitate me losing. We can all win, but we have to remove ourselves from that zero-sum mentality. We can all win in measured increments. Okay, we don't have to follow this sort of Keynesian theories of booms and busts and troughs and peaks. Okay, we can find a more humane view without exploiting each other. And I'm not an idealist. I'm a 50-year-old practical man that works with his hands every day, and who also works with young people at the same time too. Start giving consideration to your young people. They are the future that you dream of. When we talk about the future, it doesn't exist in the ether, in the air. It exists in the faces of the young people you're mentoring and bringing behind you. Don't you want to?
Yeah, love it. Thank you. And I'm going to connect. So you're the former king of the universe. I am the current queen of materiality, and that I have
great.
Having had all the conversations. So I'm going to point people to another Zoom conversation. Chuck, what you just mentioned beautifully dovetails with a rather well-recognized economist in Canada, certain Mark Anielski, who said almost exactly the same thing. And so
come on, I'm just some redneck on a tractor.
Right.
That's not even possible. I don't even have that many letters after my name, and they're not even really cool letters.
So there we go. So you heard it here and you heard it there. There's a great opportunity. And I also just want to emphasize something you said early on around this future being where people are enabled. Yeah, that's the 110 skills of folks on a farm who know how to weld and build fences and tend animals and have a sense of financial literacy and what the,
Yes.
you know, how the monetary system even works. These things are all of a piece. So
yes,
love it. Really appreciate
it's a
your time.
complete ecosystem, and they can all exist at the same time. It's a
What a
it's a
concept.
miracle.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Chuck. I'm going to stop the recording here with much
No
gratitude
worries.
and really appreciate your time.
No, thank you. It's been always a pleasure to engage with you, Lorraine. I'm just sorry this took so long.
Oh, no, it's perfect.
Okay.